Okay, hello everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Welcome to the BASH working group session. Maybe give it just a couple more minutes and let people get connected and enter the room. Looks like we still have a couple people joining. Hopefully everyone is able to see my screen, sharing a PowerPoint. And just a couple of housekeeping items. I'm Amy Reed, one of the co-chairs of the BASH working group. Grant Harder is also here with us. He's the other co-chair. He does not have Zoom access, I don't believe, so you might not be seeing him, but you should be able to hear him. Grant, are you there? And are you able to unmute yourself? Also, when I'm in Zoom mode, I'm not able to see the Pathable chat. So if you are posting in the Pathable chat, hopefully Grant is tracking that and can see what you guys are saying in there and if you have questions. Otherwise, you can get me through the Zoom chat in the Zoom app. So if you guys have been attending sessions this week so far, you're probably kind of used to that, but just wanted to be clear that the Zoom chat and the Pathable chat are different, and I can only see the Zoom chat. Okay, so it looks like the participants being added has kind of leveled out. So I think we're going to get started. Grant, if you can unmute yourself, go ahead and jump on so everybody can hear you. But if not, I'll just keep going.
Amy, I don't see Grant listed in the participant list.
Okay. He might be having technical difficulties. Thank you.
In the Pathable chat, he says he's having difficulties.
Okay.
So he's still trying.
All right, great, thank you. All right, well, I just want to go over kind of a brief agenda for our time together here. And so this session, this whole room is actually 1 hour, broken into two 30-minute kind of sessions. So the first 30 minutes is actually our BASH working group. If you know, if you've attended in person, typically this is pretty interactive where we can all kind of chime in on any kind of recent BASH concerns or good things to share, lessons learned with the whole group. So we want to have some time to do that, maybe at the end. So 11 to 11:30 is officially the BASH working group. I'm sorry, that's Eastern time. And then at the half hour, we will switch over to a panel discussion with our two BASH speakers. So we will have Jim Swift and Amanda Bowe here to answer any of your questions that you have specific to their presentations. Hopefully you guys all watched their presentations prior to this session. They were both really good. We're going to have summary slides to kind of refresh your memory if you watched them a while ago. So, okay, there is a comment in the chat. Grant called in and is listening. Okay, great. So Grant, I don't know if you can talk, but if you want to jump in, please feel free to do so. Hopefully you guys saw my slides progress. Please let me know if not. First, we're going to hear from Jay Higgins or Julio. If you are part of the Navy, you may be very familiar with him. He is calling in and hopefully has audio capabilities and is going to give a debrief on what is going on in the Navy Bash world. So Julio, if you can unmute yourself and let's see if we can hear you. Let me see if I can unmute him. Julio, where are you?
Amy, I think he may have had to drop off. I
Okay.
don't see him.
He was calling in as a phone number.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
His phone number is
Hey,
there.
hey, Amy, this is Grant. Any chance you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Well, my apologies to everybody. Of course, I'm having technical difficulties right when it's needed the most, but in any case, better late than never, right? So let's give Julio maybe 5 minutes here. In the event he can't jump on, I do have his notes, and I can do my best rendition.
Grant,
Yeah,
he's
go
trying
ahead.
to hop on.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's just give him.
He's trying to talk. He's trying to talk, but apparently we can't hear him. So we're trying to figure out why he's muted.
Okay. Thank you guys for hanging with us. The virtual conference world. Edward.
No worries.
I'm not sure what Edward's doing, but it looks fun. You're outside. It looks beautiful.
Amy, can you see Julio's phone on the lineup?
I really can't because there are so many people joined, and because my screen is shared, I'm only getting a handful of folks at a time.
Amy, if you can give me host permission, I can see the phone numbers and try to unmute.
Okay. Who said that? Cindy?
Cindy, yep, sorry.
Okay, make host. Yes. Okay.
Okay, let's see if I can
Sure.
try doing this. It doesn't look like I can unmute. Sorry.
Yeah.
So if Julio, if you're hearing this, maybe try to hang up and call back in.
This is Grant. Let me. I'll hang up and see if that in fact is we're on the same line, and then I'll try calling in again.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we hold off on Navy for now? And we'll just go down the line. So unfortunately, none of the other DoD branches were able to send their BASH representatives to the conference this year, which was kind of a bummer. And they didn't necessarily want us to speak on their behalf, which I completely understand. However, we did want you guys to have their contact information. So if you can see the slide that I have up, it is all of the contacts for the different branches, the BASH specific contacts. I think a lot of people know Julio and the Air Force representatives, Dan and Kyle, but maybe less familiar with your BASH representatives for Army and Marine Corps. So we wanted you to have all of that information. And also in the Pathable app, under the Files tab, I have saved this slide. So don't worry if you're like furiously writing it down or trying to snap a picture with your phone. It is saved to the files for this meeting. So you guys should be able to have all of that. Oh, that was a spoiler alert. I guess we can do that without Grant, but so Grant and I are stepping down as co-chairs of the BASH working group. We're super bummed. We love doing this and talking to you guys, and love talking about BASH. However, both of us started new jobs in this last year that have kind of are forcing us to step a little bit away from the working group.
Hey, this is Julio.
Yay! Hey, Julio.
Hey.
We
All
can
right, ready to go when you guys are.
Perfect. We can hear you and we're ready to listen.
Okay, I'll go quick. Thank you all
Don't
for giving me
rush.
the opportunity to speak here. Since I'm the only one of the services, I do have a couple of comments that affect all four, so I'll make those as we go through here. I'll try to go quick, Amy, so you and Grant can get to your portion. The things we're working on last year and this year, I'm really proud of our wildlife hazard management plans. I think we're the only service doing those. We have 22 CONUS installations. I've got 17 of them completed, and we're doing those things because we needed to get our airfield maintenance requirements identified and put to paper and sanctioned by the installation CO, so that would help us get money for airfield projects and help our guys at headquarters palm correctly, and it's working. And so we just have to keep refining them each year. I should get 21 out of 22 here shortly. 4 of them, of the remaining ones, are in draft. So that's been a good thing for us. As far as projects and initiatives, 2020 was a tough year, but we did get a couple of things done. You all, I think, if you got to listen to Jim Swift's update on the Pax River Eagle project, then he did better justice to it than I could do. But we did manage to find a little money for that last year and got him started, and looking forward to the results continuing, or the efforts continuing this year and into next year, because we really need to get our arms around what's going on with the eagles up there. It's a dangerous situation in the fall of each year. We also have a small-scale vulture study going on at Kingsville. We've had a vulture kettling problem over the ends of one set of the runways for years, and we've never been able to figure out what it is that's causing that. And of course, those are training aircraft, and so it's a dangerous environment. And so we finally got some money to have Texas A&M University go out and study the landscape around there this year, and see if we can find some causation, and then begin a process to mitigate those vultures there. So we were able to start that in the fall of last year. Strike reporting, we've been working really hard the last couple of 3 years to improve Navy strike reporting, because we have lagged so far behind statistically from the Air Force and FAA, and we are seeing improvements. Despite the effects of COVID last year and some other things, we still managed to increase our number of cases over the previous years. And that's actually saying something, because FAA and Air Force had significant reductions last year. So our guys turned to and kept the process going right up until the time that we changed our strike reporting system, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But so our efforts on strike reporting is helping, and our number of days to report again went down last year from 50 days the previous year to 45. We still need to knock about 15 days off of that, but I'm happy with the efforts we're seeing at the installations. The thing I'm I go around and inspect the airfields, and what I'm telling the installation bash teams is that awareness is key. If you know how well you're doing, then it's easier to identify problems. So I'm trying to get our ASOs to our installation ASOs to work with the squadron guys closer and closer, so they can track strike reporting metrics, so they know how many days it's taken and whether or not they're getting species ID, things like that. So the efforts continue, but like I said, it's getting a little better every year. OCONUS support, I've been pretty proud of that initiative over the last few years too, especially since Paul Block, who's on my team from NAFAC LANT, has been kind of running that. He sends out quarterly newsletters to every single one of the bases, which is 10 of them. And I also am inspecting most of them virtually. So the bottom line is, for years they operated alone and unafraid, and had no communications with us at all. And now they know us and we know them, and we're weighing in when they ask us. We're providing advice and support, and they are reporting bird strikes, even from a distance. So the programs are coming up, and I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, the challenges. We had two sets of challenges last year, COVID obviously being the main one, but the other challenge for us in the Navy was we transitioned from our old WES reporting system to the new system, which is AFSAS based. We call it Risk Management Information System, RMI, but it's basically the same AFSAS system that the Air Force uses, modified slightly for Navy. Well, we transitioned over after August 31st, and after that, the strike database went away. That hurt bad, and also everybody being unfamiliar with the new system. It's taken months for everybody to understand how to do strike reporting. So our strike reporting fell off. Fortunately, we had such a good year up to that point that we still increased our number of cases last year. So for the last couple of months into this year, we've just been kind of catching up as people get more familiar with the reporting system. So I think we're about caught up now. I mean, COVID affected the mailing system, sending remains to the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian had to reduce staffing for a long time, for a good long while, and so they couldn't process as quickly. So all of those things together greatly reduced the number of strike reports and species IDs in the fall. But like I said, I think we're about catching up now. I know Smithsonian's caught up. The Postal Service is back on track. So I think we're good to go now. The things that are still hurting us is the analytical tool for querying old data is still not available. They finally transferred all the data from the WES system to RMI last weekend. And they're putting the final touches on the analytical tool in the system now. So hopefully, for all you Navy folks, we should have that in short order. I'm expecting it any day now, and I'll make an announcement when that happens. The other thing that's really been hurting us is the USDA personnel, by policy, are not authorized access to RMI. And so Mike Beezer at USDA is working closely with their leadership at our safety center. And we've got to get a little MOU signed and some NDA letters signed, but we're going to get all of that done. They're not resisting us. It's just we got to do some paperwork drills to make it happen. But once those guys, we can get all our folks, all our USDA folks access, then they'll be able to pull the data from the system and get their species IDs when they send packages in. So it's a temporary delay. And I think that's about it for reporting. So overall, those challenges have hurt, but I think we're about caught up now, other than the analytical tool. The other thing that hurt us challenges-wise is, the travel restrictions from COVID prevented us doing overseas travel. So I haven't inspected any airfields overseas, and Paul Block was unable to do a continue the Overseas Wildlife Hazard Assessment Program. I don't make the overseas bases do WHMPs because they don't really control their airfields. So what Paul does, he goes over and tries to do one a year, a WHA, and then he makes recommendations in the WHA for what they need to do to their habitats to mitigate BASH. We were trying to do Souda Bay last year, but couldn't get there, obviously, and it's looking like it might be a bust this year, too. Hopefully not, but it's looking that way right now. We're going to restart as soon as the travel restrictions are lifted. Okay, in the future, one of the things we're really excited about is getting our new USDA wildlife biologist at Sigonella. And the poor guy's been ready to travel for weeks now, but we're just waiting on his visa paperwork to be complete. But that's a big deal. It's a first Navy and USDA support overseas, and so really looking forward to that one. And oh, by the way, the Air Force is also in the process of hiring a guy who's going to be stationed at Ramstein, but he's going to be providing Africa support. And I think at times that will include Djibouti, which we need some help down there at times. So really looking forward to the whole concept of USDA expansion into Europe. And maybe Mike and or Jenny will have more to say about that later. DoD BASH working group is getting very close to reality now. We had another meeting last week. The charter goals and objectives are going to be briefed to the Joint Service Safety Council by the chair of the DoD Aviation Safety Working Group in April. And hopefully we'll get the approval to join. I don't see him telling us no, because the ASWG chair is he's influential and he's excited about us joining up. So we had a meeting with him last week, and he had a couple of interesting things to say. He basically told us, don't wait for the approval, just start working on issues, and he gave us a couple. The first one was the potential use of counter-UAS radar technology for BASH purposes. Counter-UAS is like the big game in town right now. Well, they're going to use a form of a radar, and it's possible if we can get in on the conversations across the services, we can use some of that radar to help us for BASH purposes, where most of our airfields don't have avian radar, and we're not going to be able to buy them. So, but if the security folks are getting them, then maybe it's a win-win. We'll see. Number two, he made us aware that there is increasing scrutiny on the level of damages being inflicted on F-35s, Joint Strike Fighters, because of BASH incidents. Those aircraft have so many sensors on them that pretty much no matter where a bird hits them, it's significant cost. And so he told us that we should expect a lot more data calls in the future on incidents associated with the F-35. And so I was at Lemoore, one of our F-35 bases last week, and I told the CEO, hey, be on your guard. There may be more scrutiny on your BASH program as a result of bird strikes. And they've had a Class B strike on an F-35 a year and a half ago already. So some interesting things going on with the DoD BASH working group, more to follow. Also, you may remember a couple of years ago, we in partnership with Air Force, funded the U.S. Army ERDC to conduct a grass height study, because we've been using the old 11 to 14 grass height for ages, but we didn't have any science to back it up. So we asked ERDC to study it, and they did a desktop study in 2018, filed a report based on the data in the Air Force and the Navy, and their recommendation was for taller grass, greater than 14 inches, but that wasn't the end of it. We needed to do field testing. Well, we didn't have any money for that, and lo and behold, this year, the Navy Ag Lease program with NAFAC has generously found the money for us to study, do a field test for 2 years on the grass height study, which we hope to start this year. we are going to start this year. We're picking the locations right now, so we're pretty doggone excited about that one. And I'm hearing that the Marine Corps Natural Resources is very interested in doing it at one of their places, at one of their airfields too. So I'm hoping that happens. But the bottom line is we're going to get some better visibility and science backing up what we should do about grass heights on airfields. And the very last thing is the Bird Strike Meeting USA schedule for Minneapolis in August is going to be virtual once again. We're not going to go to Minneapolis, unfortunately. The Bird Strike Committee USA has already decided that. And right now we're just working on, okay, if we're going to do it virtually, how are we going to pull it off? The chatter I heard in the last meeting, and maybe Mike Beeser's got more detail than I do, but I heard two days of meetings, 2 4-hour sessions, one a day, and we'll see how it plays out. We'll put word out as soon as we know more, but we got to figure out the communication venue, the timing, registration requirements, in addition to the agenda. So more to follow on that. And that, Amy and Grant, is about it for me, unless somebody has questions.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of information and a great update. We don't have too much time, and I want to get to our new co-chairs, but does anybody have a quick question for Julio? Okay, thank you so much, Julio. Please try to stay on the line in case there's some follow-up questions.
Sure thing.
Okay, Grant, are you there? Oh, are you there?
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yay! All right, so I'll be short and brief. Yes. So just wanted to give a shout out first to all the nominees. We had quite a few this year for the next co-chair, and a great selection to choose from. Our winners for the next 2 years will be Tom Tandock and Carl Fay. Unfortunately, neither of them could join due to budgetary restraints. And Carl, I talked to both of them. Carl's on TDY overseas in transit back to the States, and Tom wasn't able to fund his registration this year, but they're both super excited and grateful for the opportunity, and are looking forward to running BASH from here on out. If you guys want to reach out to them directly, there's their contact info, and of course Amy and I will be available if there's any follow-up. But with that, I'll give it back to you, Amy.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm gonna also include their contact information and bios in the file folder for this meeting as well. I didn't upload it previously because I didn't want it to be a big spoiler alert or a big announcement. Okay, so that was a super quick working group meeting, went by super fast. We are officially supposed to be moving into our panel discussion now, but I did want to give it a minute, since we did have some technical difficulties, and just open it up to questions from the group. If you guys have any questions, specifically for the BASH working group, or Julio, and then we'll move into questions for Jim and Amanda. I can't see the Pathable chat. It doesn't look like there's any action going on in the Zoom chat. Okay, we will keep it rolling. So first we will have Jim Swift. Jim, are you still here?
Yep, I'm on.
Okay, great. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to listen to Jim's presentation. And this is just kind of a brief summary slide to refresh you on his project, but I really want to let him talk about it, then open it up to questions from you guys. So Jim, you have the floor.
All right, great. Thanks, Amy, and thanks, Grant. Appreciate you guys having hosting the event here this year. I understand there's some challenges to the way where things are going, so thank you for your time and effort with that. Just to recap what the project is about. At Pax River during the months of September and October, we've been having increased concentrations of bald eagles, both juveniles and adults, in not only in the general area, but specifically onto the airfield. Not sure exactly what that behavior is for, why. That's one of the questions we're trying to answer. But the project itself is to capture and put GPS transmitters on 10 birds, adults and juveniles both, and follow their movements. Specifically, we're looking to know what their movements are around the installation, around the airfield, while they're here in those 2 to 2.5 months in the fall. We want to know what those daily movements are, what their patterns are, where they're coming from, what are they doing when they're on the airfield, and then what do they do the rest of the day. The general pattern was they'd show up first thing in the morning, hang out on the airfield. Obviously, we're trying to do as much active dispersal as possible to keep them off. But they do like to come to those taxiways and runways in infield areas, and both in the morning, and then by 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the morning, they disappear, go on about their day. So just trying to figure out what those patterns are, what those movements are. In 2020, we caught 4 birds. I believe it was 2 adults and 2 juveniles, all of them believed to be males. We have transmitters on those and are currently tracking their movements. None of those birds stayed in the area for very long. 3 of the 4 left almost immediately after being captured. 1 did stick around for a short period of time, but not for too long. And we do have efforts in the works or planning stages to continue and trap at least 6 additional birds in the fall of 2021. If the additional money comes through, we'll get a few more transmitters and try and get those on as well. So with that, I'll kind of monitor the chat box here, or if anybody has any questions, feel free to shout out. Tom, Alexa, I see your comment there about the migratory bird permit, Fish and Wildlife Service online permitting. We are currently struggling with that right now. We had a renewal in about the time that everything shut down in March of 2020, and we still do not have an updated permit. I just got access to their new online system about 2 weeks ago. And need to resubmit our renewal request. So we're struggling with that one a good bit right now.
I have a question, Jim. I was just wondering if you have any lessons learned or tips and tricks from the actual GPS transmitters. There's a couple of them on the market, and I was just wondering if you had pros and cons or if there was a learning curve with that. I know you talked about a learning curve with the trapping effort, but I was wondering about the transmitter.
We have a cooperative agreement with the Center for Conservation Biology at William & Mary, and Bart Paxton is the guy doing all the trapping and setting up the specifics on the project. And forgive me, I forget the exact brand of the transmitter, but he had a particular transmitter that he was working with and had experience with. So he was, we went with his preference for that transmitter. I can find that data, and I can post that up later if folks are interested.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, Jim. Mike Beeger asked on the thread what the age class for the birds you captured were.
Yep, we had two adults and two juveniles. Exact ages I don't have, but it's 50-50 right now, adults and juveniles. And that's what we were hoping to get. We were hoping to get a little bit of a cross-section of adults and juveniles to see if there's any differences in the patterns of the movements of those age classes.
How many individuals as a whole do you think pass through NAS packs?
We've got 3 active nests actually on the installation, and a couple of nests just off the installation. So we've got anywhere from 6 to 8 birds that are resident birds. But in that September-October timeframe, we're looking to have that number jumps from 6 to 8 up to 2 to 3 dozen. So it's a significant increase. There's some indication just from the trapping effort that Bart and crew did this year that there's a food source that shows up that time of year that the eagles are really keying on. So that may be the initial attraction, but it still didn't explain why they're coming to the airfield first thing in the morning. I don't know if that's a social behavior, it's a behavior just seeing who's new to the area, what's going on. Get their cup of coffee and warm up in the morning and get going. But they do disappear during right about the lunchtime, and that may be when they're going to hunt and use and fish out the school of fish out the river.
Jim, Linda Hartzell asked on the thread, how far out is the telemetry data collected funded? Is that 2 years, 3 years?
We're looking at certainly multiple years. The transmitters themselves will be good for certainly 2 to 3 years, and funding right now. It's on a recurring cycle. We do plan to continue that funding for the life of those transmitters, though. And that does include some analysis of the data also with the final report at the end.
Okay, great. Another question from Jenny Washburn. Now that we're in nesting season, are the adults you put the satellite tags on showing nesting behavior?
There's been nothing that indicates that they're all in a territory or on a nest just yet. I would expect certainly by this time that if they're going to be nesting, then they should be on a nest. But I have not seen the telemetry data that indicates that they are currently on a nest.
Hey, Jim, this is Bill Berry. Are there things that you can do now for BASH with, to reduce your hazard with the bald eagles while you're waiting for some of this really neat natural history information to come in, and how will that inform your BASH actions in the future?
Yeah, good question, Bill. We certainly have active dispersals during that time of year. We actually set up an Eagle Watch bill this past year. So we had folks available on the airfield and available to do dispersal at a moment's notice during daylight hours, from the first thing in the morning until sunset. So the active dispersal is the best that we can do. Until we can really put some more brain cells on this and figure out why they're coming to the airfield. there really isn't a solid strategy or technique that we could employ to keep them off. So active dispersal is going to be our best bet for right now.
Okay, we might have time for about one more question for Jim.
Hey, Jim, this is Julio. I think you and I have talked about this before, but there's also a similar project going on with the Air Force up at Langley. Do you guys share info at all or talk at all?
We haven't exchanged information with Langley as of yet. I think once we start getting a little bit more data in and start looking at it, start doing the analysis on it, we'll reach out to those folks and see what they've got, kind of a picture that they have in their area. I think the behaviors are just a little bit different than what Langley is seeing, but and not having spoken to them for sure, I need to reach out to them and figure that out.
Yeah, the only reason I mentioned it is because we were in a bird strike meeting the other day, and Dan Sullivan mentioned it again, and I thought, everybody kind of took note of the fact that there's a couple of these projects going on in and around the Chesapeake, so that's why I bring it up. But makes sense what you're saying. I'd probably wait too.
Okay, Julio, while you're here, and if there's no more questions for Jim, I might steal this last minute. We did get a question for you, Julio, about why the higher grass height was advantageous in that desktop study that was done for the Navy.
Well, I think it primarily had to do with the relative hazard score on military aircraft study that Morgan Pfeiffer did with the USDA. It basically showed that the larger predatory kind of birds are the ones that cause the most damage to Navy aircraft. And so when studied in that context, we want the longer grass. So because it shields the little critters on the ground better, and so the raptors, it's harder for the raptors to find food sources. And if I'm mucking it up, Paul Blocker, Mike Beezer, anybody wants to chime in, feel free. But that's my view of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any last questions for Jim? Grant, did you have any more in the Pathable chat?
Trying to skim through it real quick here. James asked how far away are your nesting birds on your AOA?
We've got three active nests currently. One of them is over a mile away. The other two are closer than we would like or than we would want them. However, there's some bird biology there too that we'd like to see come out with this eagle study also, and we're hoping that the transmitters and the birds that we catch, we can get some of these resident birds. But we believe that the nests are set up such that the territories established are actually preventing those birds or keeping those birds from crossing any of the runways or taxiways on the airport. So we're keeping a close eye on that right now. But we do have a couple that are fairly close. I'd say less than a mile. And Grant, you were there. I think it's probably a half a mile on one of those.
Yeah, sounds about right. I guess in the interest of time, so Amanda gets equal time. We should probably kick it over to her presentation and then take Q&A for her. And then if there's any leftover time, we can circle back to any topics.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Jim. That was a great update.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, Amanda, are you here with us?
I should be.
Yay, yes, we can see you and hear you.
Perfect.
Okay, so same as Jim, if you could just give a quick rundown, hit the high points on your slide, and then we can open it up for questions.
So my presentation was talking about it's going on over 2 years now, project that I've been working on modeling species-specific strike risk for U.S. military aircraft. And it started out as kind of a pull data and see what we can do with it. And we're now building towards this ultimate goal of developing a species-specific predictive model strike risk for military. And I'm defining strike risk here as looking at 2 components. So the frequency, how often a bird is struck, or what's the probability that you strike a bird. And then Julio was talking about relative hazard scores, the severity, what's the probability of damage if a bird is struck. And so far, I'm just biting off a tiny little chunk of this larger goal, looking at running a comparison for Navy flights and looking at the differences between flights that experienced bird strikes versus flights that did not, trying to get a better understanding of that frequency component and how the airframe, time of day, month, season, airfield, all impacts that probability of a flight striking a bird. It's been about 2 years to get to this point because we've had a lot of challenges with the data, both inherent in the form that just bird strikes are rare events, and we often don't know a precise location or altitude or airspeed or any of those important variables where the strike actually occurred. We also have some challenges getting accurate species identification. I will say that's gotten better the last couple of years, but there's still a lot of unknown species or unknown raptor in the database that I'm trying to build around. So that's all I have. If anybody has any questions about the project.
Again, if you could put your questions in the Zoom chat or the Pathable chat, Grant will be monitoring the Pathable chat. So I had a question. So I think previously for relative hazard score, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe one of the variables that they used to determine relative hazard score was how frequently that species was struck. So were they already kind of incorporating some inherent likelihood or probability into that calculation?
So there's been 2 different studies in that regard. There's already referenced the Piper et al. 2018, which looked at just the relative hazard scores, which are the breakdown of flights, the proportion of flights that experienced either significant damage, negative effect on flight, injuries. And then there was a civil side of the DeVault et al. 2018 paper that looked like they looked at both frequency and severity. They looked at the relative hazard scores, and then they used a standardized strike frequency metric in there too to get the species rankings by risk.
So then that one was more like overall risk, not just severity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what we'd like to get at with the military.
Right, right. But you're using more variables than just strike record.
Correct. I'm pulling all flight information. A lot of what I'm trying to do is tease out the differences. You know, if we're seeing a high strike frequency with a certain airframe, is that just because there's more of that type of plane flying, or is that actually that airframe is more prone to being struck? So I'm trying to get a feel for the background noise so we can try to tease out what's actually significant.
Yeah. Thank you.
So no new questions that I can see of. Kevin Portek did have a comment saying that it sounds very similar to the strike probability model developed for the Air Force by Marshall Day.
I'd actually be curious about that because that's one I haven't encountered doing some of my research. So if you can send me a link to that paper or more information about that.
Yeah, will do.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. At the moment,
Amanda,
I'm focusing on Navy because that's what we have the biggest chunk of data from.
maybe if you want to put your email address in the chat.
Amanda, Mike Beezer asked, what were the predictor variables in the initial modeling attempt?
So for the initial modeling attempt, we looked at airframe, broken down into airframe categories. So I believe it was stealth, fighter, cargo, and rotorcraft. We looked at time of day and month and migratory flyway, so a general location. So I just saw a question pop up from Jessica Hawkins. Is the study taking place in one state or a collection of data from multiple states? So for the Air Force, I'm started to take a look at 5 air bases that we've been able to get good data from. For the Navy, I'm looking at all over the continental US. I have every flight record that took place within the continental US for about the last 10 years. And that's been my baseline. I think specifically I've been focusing on just the last 5 years, but yes, all over the US. No problem.
I have another follow-up question. Do you anticipate that some of the species with a high relative hazard score or high severity might have a lower overall risk based on likelihood, or is this like still a big unknown?
It's kind of up in the air right now. I do think there are going to be differences because I do believe there will be some species that if we do strike them, it's a very problematic. It's likely to cause serious damage, but they might be less commonly struck.
Yeah.
Versus some of, like we always talk about the horned larks, and they're very commonly struck, but very unlikely to cause damage. So looking at those two together, and I'm already seeing some trends that are a little different from what we see with the relative hazard scores in terms of what factors influence the probability of striking a bird in the first place versus having damage if you do strike a bird.
Amanda, Tammy Conkle would like to know if the study includes Hawaii.
Not at the moment. I thought Hawaii might be too different. I think that would be something we'd want to look at separately as its own little ecosystem. And then I also see Lorraine Ketzler, are you looking at mostly avians or also including bats? I'm looking at birds specifically. I do have bats in the data. I have the option to go through that. That might be something further down the road. There's also an Air Force study currently ongoing that's looking specifically at strike risk with bats. So Brian Morrison down in, where is he located? Somewhere in Texas, or New Mexico. Yeah, he's doing a specific bat study. I'm blanking on what air base he's with, but he's with the training command for the Air Force, and they're looking at that.
Anybody else? We've got like 4 minutes left in our session, so if there's nothing more specific for Amanda, I could open it up again to if anybody's got follow-up questions for Jim or Julio.
Well, hang on a second,
So,
this
yeah,
is Julio. There's a question that maybe I can answer. James Kwan asked, has this type of data that Amanda's looking at been incorporated into WHAs or WHMPs? The answer is not yet. The intention is to use it for that down the road once the study's complete, but we don't, because we're all about one of the other functions of the WHMP in the future is going to be to help the CO assess risk on the airfield. and we're not there yet. We're taking baby steps, just getting the requirements written down, but the risk component is definitely coming. So that's why Air Force and Navy are so interested in this project from Amanda. That's the answer.
And then I see we have 2 more questions there. Does the study include sub-areas of installations without an active BASH program? I can't remember exactly where San Clemente Island is, but yes, I'm looking at every strike event that has occurred within the continental US. So some of these occurred with Navy aircraft at civil airfields, joint use airfields, anywhere that there was a strike incident between a bird and an aircraft. Those are included. Grant says it's in California. And then from Mike Beecher, can you comment generally on some of the challenges with data and the gaps that exist? So, as I said, one of the biggest ones is just the fact that bird strikes are very rare events. We are looking at something that happens, I mean, the common metric is bird strikes per 10,000 flights. So statistically, that can be a challenge to work with. And then that gets even harder when you try to break it up into any kind of meaningful grouping, like taxonomic groupings, looking at only within a specific airframe, only within a certain command group. That gets even more challenging. And then the other big problem we're seeing is there's a lot of variables that we would like to include, such as airspeed, habitat variables, that would be helpful if we knew exactly where the strike occurred. So the problem is a lot of these strikes, we don't know where it occurred because the damage is not discovered until it's already landed. Especially with this frequency component, I'm also looking at non-damaging strikes, and the vast majority of the non-damaging strikes go undetected at the time of the strike. So we just know that a strike occurred somewhere between point A and point B, and we don't know, was that takeoff and landing? Is that somewhere in the route? So we don't have those specific altitudes, airspeed, all those things that would be very biologically important and great to model, but it's just not there in the data. Okay. Julio, I think there's another question in the chat for you.
It's about updates to helicopter bash issues. Well, I don't have a very specific answer to that. All I can say is that we have been seeing more strike reports in the last few years than we used to. The helicopter community seemed to be averse to reporting, like they didn't feel like they hit a lot of birds. It turned out, according to the Naval Air Force's aviation safety reporting system, though, they were hitting a lot of birds, and so we've been putting some emphasis on those guys, and they are reporting better. That's about the best answer I can give for you right now, though. They are reporting.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions trickling in for Amanda right now. So I guess with that, we can open it up. We have a 10-minute grace period, my understanding, before we're kicked out of this meeting. So we can open up to Q&A for everybody. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jim, and Julio, again, for all your updates and the presentations. I will plug one more thing if you haven't found where the pre-recorded presentations are. You can find them either below here on this page, or at least the page I'm looking at, or you can find them under the pre-recorded tab under NMFWA, the NMFWA tab. So with that, well, I guess we'll open it up to Q&A.
Maybe nothing else. We had a lot of good questions and a lot of good discussions. So the time went by really, really fast.
It sure did. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amanda and Jim and Julio. It was really good.
Yeah,
no
and
problem.
if anyone
And then-
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine, Grant. I'm just saying thanks for hosting. Appreciate the efforts there too.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Yeah, and again, if anyone needs contact information for anybody, if you don't have it, reach out to Amy and I, and we'll be happy to get it to you.
All right. Should we cut it off?
I guess so. Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for putting up with the
All right.
technical difficulties.
Yes, yes, indeed.
That's part of life now.
It is. It is. All right. Thank you guys.
All right. Take care.